Hello, and welcome to the mentorDINO podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Rosier. I am an architect and founder of mentorDINO. Join me each week as I speak with amazing professionals in and around the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, as we are all part of a larger interconnected community. We discuss everything from career stories, lessons learned, and advice for others finding their own unique career path. Thank you to all of our current subscribers, and if you're new, welcome to the conversation. And if you like this episode, please do me a favor by hitting subscribe, like, or share it with a friend. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support them on their own unique career journey. On this week of the mentorDINO podcast, I would like to welcome Nicole Dumont, principal and founder of NR Design in Akron, Ohio. Thank you, Nicole, for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thanks for having me here.
And I know we spontaneously met at the Women's Leadership Summit out in Chicago this past year and got to learn a little bit about your story and starting your firm. And we had a great chat as we try to meander our way back to the hotel across Chicago in public transit. But to kick off the episode, I want to let my listeners hear from you a little bit more about your story. Do you mind introducing yourself and letting them know a little bit about your experience and journey so far in your education and career?
Sure. Yeah. So my education started at the Savannah College of Art and Design down in Savannah, Georgia, where I studied architecture and actually was a collegiate athlete as well, which was a very interesting way to spend your college career. So I was at Savannah for my undergraduate and my master's program. And then after I graduated, I got my first job in Atlanta at a big firm, which was a great transition for me. I think transitioning from school to professional life, there is a large gap in the learning curve. And that firm I started at was a great place to learn and get my footing. I actually, even today, still speak to one of my mentors / managers from that firm. Even so much so that I was able to hire him on to do some of my spec writing for a project recently. So great place to start. Great place to get your feet in the door. So I was in Atlanta a couple of years. I went to Boston for 1 year and then really decided that I wanted to move back home. I'm from the Cleveland area and I missed my family. I was done using all my PTO for travel to get back home. So moved back to the Cleveland area, got a job at a large firm again. And then from there, worked a couple of years, got my license, finished my license, my testing, and then had the opportunity to open my own firm.
It was so interesting to hear. I know we more talked the opening your own firm part because you are a younger professional. So it's, yes. As I talk to more and more professionals that own their own firm, I'm like, crap, you guys are my age. And what am I doing? What are you doing? And what can other people do? And I also found it fascinating that you just hired on your first manager that you had. So it's like role reversal.
It's crazy.
In terms
yes. Yeah. It's so much fun. I
still talk to my first project manager from like summer internship. Okay. And I'm like, oh, what if I hired him on? I think he would give me crap, but
So we definitely had a different kind of relationship. He was that manager who would mark up your drawing set and just circle things and write no. And I think you had to have, I think because I was an athlete, I am used to getting critiqued and kind of scrutinized. But I know that it's because the coaches and the professors and the managers at that point are trying to get the best out of you. So I had a good mindset to take hard criticism as a tool to get better. And I didn't let hard criticism beat me down or beat me up. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that really contributed to us having a good relationship. Even at other firms, when I worked in Boston, when I worked in Cleveland, I would call this manager and ask him questions on things I would get stuck on. And he wouldn't necessarily give me the answer, but he would tell me where to look in order to find it. So, and I just really
Yeah.
respected that. And I hope someday I could be that kind of manager. I don't know. We could ask my staff to see if I am or not.
Yeah, because sometimes we don't have things memorized or it's project specific, but a lot of the times if you can at least get a step in the right direction, then you can figure it out, but you don't want to be like spinning your wheels forever either.
Right. Yeah.
I,
Yep.
I know I always try to get people to laugh when I do red lines. Like I'll be brutally honest in my red lines, but then I'll usually put like a frowny face if I start seeing the same thing over and
Yeah.
over again, or like,
Yeah.
just other things. So it's hopefully people don't take red lines and markups too personally.
Right.
It's, you're learning. You talked about the steep learning curve. We got a
Yes.
lot to figure out, and the
Yeah.
learning doesn't stop ever either.
Never. Mm-hmm.
But before we jump off of your main story, I want to jump back to your college years where you also were an athlete, because I remember I was an athlete all the way until college. And then everybody just tells you, don't even try to do mini sports, not even like
Yeah.
professional collegiate sports, and keep up with architecture. And a lot
Right.
of professors will push you away from doing that. So, how did you manage studio and that athlete time? And do you have any recommendations
Yeah.
if somebody else is trying to do that?
It's a great question. So I actually started my collegiate career at Miami of Ohio, which is a Division I athletic program. I was on the swim team there, and the school would not allow you to do both. You were not allowed to study architecture and compete as a Division I athlete. They had club sports that you could do, but it
Mm-hmm.
was just something the school knew best and would not allow the student athletes to participate in. So I did 1 year at Miami and found that out. And at that point, I had really decided architecture is what I wanted to study. So what I did was search other schools that had athletic programs at a lower caliber and architecture, and found SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design. And I won't say it was a great decision, but I wasn't the only athlete studying architecture and trying to compete. The time commitment for both, as many architecture students would know, is a lot. It's basically two mostly full-time jobs. So I had to get very good at time management. I had to know when the project was good enough and stop. I could not do all-nighters in the studio. I think in my entire college career, I used to be able to count my all-nighters on one hand. I think I did 3 or 4 in the 6 years undergrad and graduate that I studied architecture. And did my projects, did they maybe not turn out as good as they could have? Probably. But I think what it did was teach me the importance of picking a path, staying on the path, really making sure I was not goofing around and wasting time or misusing time. Um, and then just staying focused. I had to go home. I had a cutoff. I would leave the studio at like 11. And then our first practice was at, I think, 6 a.m. or 5:30.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew I had to go home and get 6 hours of sleep in order to show up the next day at practice the way I was expected to. I was also a scholarship athlete. And so the expectation was high. They had us on, you had to have the grades that you needed. You had to perform at the level at which they expected you to. So we were very managed. I would say we did not party in college. That is part of the college experience that I did not participate in. I don't want to say I missed out because I was never really the party person anyway, but I would say my college career looked a lot different than most people's.
Yeah, but those time management skills carry over a lot to practice
They
because
carry a ton to
I feel
practice, and they
you
manage my
see
life
so
right
many
now.
people, yeah, like designing in circles forever and
Yes.
ever. You could do that in studio and pull it all-nighters, but
Yeah.
if I'm paying somebody, if I'm not paying you hourly, I'm not paying you for that time. So you just devalued yourself with how many
Yeah.
hours you're spending. If I would pay you hourly, then you are not going to be working these
I
crazy
would fire
hours.
you.
Like
Yeah.
I'm not paying you for that. So
Right.
it's, even though it's very different, like I remember even when I look at resumes, if I see somebody even doing a club sport, I see that as time management skills and being understand, like you said, when to stop, because
Mhm.
you could do 50 elevations, a bunch of sections, and you don't need them. It's, what do I need to convey the idea properly
Mhm.
to a crit? And
Mhm.
carrying over into the real world, what do I need to convey properly for the contractor to bid this project and build it? You could keep
Yes.
drawing forever on the same project.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think that's very important, but give you
Yeah.
props because also swimming, I know at any level is always the early morning sport.
Yes. We
And
were,
I was
yes.
always, it was always the after school or women's lacrosse got the very last time slot. So I'd be doing my practice at like 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night because we'd
Right.
be the last on
Yeah.
the field. So I was kind of the opposite. I'd be more of a night owl with it, but I did not
Mhm.
do club or collegiate in college. So I'm always envious of those that were able to do it and learn
Yeah.
from those.
It was a great experience. Yeah. A hard one, but I learned a lot.
You figured it out.
I did.
So, how was the licensure process for you as you were changing jobs and cities throughout that
Yeah.
process? Or did
And
you
states.
not
Yeah.
take your exams right away and wait?
I took my exams the minute I could. So we were, I think, the first generation. I was maybe a few years into the switch from you could be gaining your IDP hours at the same time that you were testing. And I did that. I think I took my first exam a year out of college, and I had all of my exams done before the 5-year mark. Now, I did not pass all of them the first time, I will admit. I was also the generation that we had 7 exams. So I took
Mm-hmm.
the structural one twice, and I took the mechanical one 3 times. And it was those darn vignettes, those drawing portions at the end that on the mechanical one, I did not pass that one twice. And I was so bummed. So, and I started testing in Georgia. I set up my NCARB account as a Georgia resident. And then as I moved to Boston and then back to Cleveland, although I always updated my address, I actually, when I finished my exams and my hours and all the documentation, I actually received my license in the state of Georgia, even though I was living in Ohio. And then shortly after, maybe 6 months, once I knew I was, or I guess it would have been a year. Once I knew I was going to open a firm, I applied for reciprocity in Ohio.
Yeah, I figured you wouldn't have changed it once you started, but that was going to be
No.
my next question because
Yes.
I know a lot of professionals trying to pick which state to go with originally. Like even
Yes.
Pennsylvania and Ohio are different because I need
Mhm.
more hours on the IDP side than Ohio.
So I had
Oh,
some
okay.
friends that were, hey, I went to school in Ohio. I'll just get my Ohio license because it's less
Yeah.
hours. I'm like, yeah, I guess so. But then if you want to stay in Pennsylvania and practice over here, and who knows if you open up a firm or need to
Right.
stamp, then you have to do more paperwork.
More paperwork,
But
pay a couple more fees. I had a good friend that
yeah,
I didn't graduate with. She was a year or two ahead of me, but we worked at the same firm originally. And when she finished her exams and her hours, she did all this research to find the state that had the lowest cost fees to maintain a license. And that's where she got her license. She knew she wasn't going to start a firm. She was always going to work under somebody, but she wanted the least amount of hassle. And I thought that was such a unique way of choosing.
yeah, it's a brilliant way of thinking of it. But I give you credit for doing that mechanical exam. I think I prayed after taking that exam because you get that time period where you didn't know if you
Yeah.
passed
It
or
was like 2
failed.
weeks or
And I'm
3
like,
weeks or something. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, please, I don't want to take that one again. There was just so much information in it. But I
Yes.
remember failing sight because I graded the vignette the wrong direction. Like all the practice exams had you grade in a certain direction, and it was the opposite. And I
Yeah.
didn't notice it needed to go in the opposite direction until halfway through the vignette part of the exam.
Mm-hmm.
But thankfully, I failed also something else on the multiple choice. Not that that's any better, but if I only failed the vignette, I would have been so mad because it
So
wasn't that hard
mad.
of one.
Right. Yeah.
But
Now they
but I
got
want
rid
to
of the
shift
vignettes.
over, yeah,
I
which
don't think they're even
I don't
part of them
know.
anymore.
No, they are case studies is what they call them now. So it's
Oh,
like
okay.
almost reviewing a drawing set and everything and a
Oh,
bunch of documents. And I am an awful reader. I'm a very slow reader. So I am perfectly fine playing the game of the vignettes that were made in 93
yes.
and having to learn really old programs. So, like, I will play the drawing game. I am not going into
Yeah.
the case studies. So I give everybody credit for dealing with the case studies that are
Yeah,
in there now.
for sure.
But jumping over into your own firm, how did you know it was time to go off on your own?
I think there were several different markers that kind of showed me that it was a chance I was willing to take. At that time, the firm I was working at, I really felt stuck. They were having like a big management shift and they were retitling everybody. And I felt like I had really poured my heart into a few different areas, the architectural library, code, like defining code and making almost like cheat sheets to help people navigate the code. And it was kind of just going completely unnoticed. And that was really heartbreaking. And not that I needed a monetary attaboy for it, but I think I was looking for like a little bit of like, hey, you're doing a good job. And at that time, I had already received my license. I was project managing a fairly large adaptive reuse project that was a historic tax credit and a really tight budget and a really complicated building. So I had, essentially a remote office that I would go over to on the job site and spend 2 days a week at. So I went over there and I was talking with the owner of the general contracting firm doing the job. How did you start your firm? Would you do it again? Do you have any, do you know any other firms in the area? I'm just kind of ready for something different. Who would you recommend as an architecture firm? And this owner said to me, well, if you have your license, why don't you just go off on your own? We always get small projects that we could push to you. They need a stamp, but they're way too small for a firm like the one you're working at. Even if it's temporary, we could keep you busy and we could keep you paid for a little while you decide and look around. So I thought about it. I went home. I talked to my then husband about it and talked to my mentor about it, and decided that it was a risk I was willing to take at that time. So the next day, or a day or two later, I went online and registered my business with the state of Ohio. I called a lawyer to set up the LLC because I didn't want to mess that up in any way. That, like, starting a business, I wanted to make sure I did everything correctly. And then I opened a business bank account. I got an EIN number, and now I'm
Ta-da!
almost 6 years into it. Yeah. It's crazy. I think one of the hardest parts was deciding what my logo was going to look like and what colors I wanted as my business background.
Yeah. And as design professionals, because it's like, well, you have to make a decision and stop at some point and roll with it, and you can rebrand later, but it's not
You could
something
always
you can
rebrand. The other thing that was hard was, I didn't want to name it Nicole Dumont Designs or Nicole Dumont Architecture or, whatever. I felt a tremendous amount of pressure to not advertise that I was a woman-owned business at that time. So I talked to a few other friends of mine, other design professionals, and kind of got some input on how can I discreetly name my firm after myself without just blatantly using my name.
Yeah. What was their advice? Because I know, I don't know, when you hit certain parts of the country, being a female professional in a male-dominated industry, they just see the name and they'll go somewhere else because of the name.
Yeah.
But
a lot of the advice was, oh, you're being silly. Just name your business whatever you want to. Some of their advice, well, I ended up using my initials, and that was advice I was given. And I liked that. It was discreet enough. It didn't feel boastful in my mind, for my own emotional security in it. I had some really crazy names that I immediately said no to. So, yeah.
Yeah. And coming up with a name that's not taken. I know when I had to come up with mentorDINO, it took me forever because I was blogging under Mentor Architect, but because I wasn't going to do architectural services, I couldn't use the word architect legally.
Yeah.
So it was like coming up with a name, but I didn't want to put my name on it. So going through the process, so many pieces of paper and words and trying to figure out what to do.
Yes. And then trying to see if the website domain was available and the Facebook domain and the Instagram domain. So my website is actually NR Design ARCH because there is an NR Design in a different country that's graphic design or something like that. That domain was actually already taken. So we had to get creative.
Yeah. There's so much already taken. You're like, I have this brilliant idea. And then you do a search and you're like, damn.
As soon as we picked a name for my son, I went and started him a Google email to make sure he could have his name.
Grab it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you get once you start your own firm. Then it's like, okay, now I'm going to set up my kid up for success by having a Gmail.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
But I also wanted to circle back on how you had your mentor from before to reach out to, which, if you're only have been in one firm, a lot of the times if you're thinking about going off on your own, you don't want anybody in your firm to know that you're going down that direction. Because then if you don't do it or something happens where you decide to pull back, then I don't know. I always feel like you don't want to be judged if you're looking around or doing something else. So I think that's important to keep track of people you used to work with.
It is. And I spoke to him a lot, Eric Letbetter, my manager, if he's going to listen to this podcast eventually. He was a great resource. He had been a cheerleader of mine. He was almost always available to answer questions, whether it was, hey, how do I set up a car loan, to, hey, how do I detail this? And then actually the manager I was working under directly at the firm I left to start this, I had a really close relationship with him as well. So I was open with him, and I tried to share why I was doing it and what I was looking for and in leaving their firm. And he made it sound like if I wanted to come back ever, the doors would be open. And even to this day, I see him at different AIA events, and it's great to catch up with him. It's great to get to show him what we're working on. I actually presented to him because he's on an architectural review board in a city that I did a project in. And that was a really cool experience for him to then get to see us, presenting a project of our own. So even that relationship, though, we were both sad to say goodbye, I feel like that one is also a fun, a fun one to keep track of and, share updates with.
Yeah. And keeping that open connection, because so many times people talk about don't burn bridges, but it goes both ways on the employer side. Like if your firm goes south and you need something or you can help them out, don't burn the bridge to let good employees come back if something doesn't end up working out.
Yeah.
So, but I know another hard decision whenever you go off on your own is what to specialize or project type to work on. So how did you decide what you wanted to specialize in for your firm, and what do you specialize in?
What do you? Yeah, that's a great question. I maybe don't have the most eloquent answer. I feel like our specialty found us, if that makes sense. So when I went off on my own, some of the projects that I won right off the bat was renovation projects for a charter school in my area. And the first few projects I did with them, they were a couple thousand square feet renovations in their school location, renovating the back half of the building, or these couple of classrooms that weren't built out in phase one. And I hadn't ever done education work at that point, but I had done adaptive reuse. So I had the knowledge of, okay, this building exists already. What are my first couple of steps? Because they're different than a ground up building. And I was able to do those projects, fairly quickly and easily because I had the experience of running other jobs, even though they weren't the same style. And I built a really good relationship with that client. And we have now done, I tried to count today, 12. We are at 12 projects with that school client. And we have done everything from a 3,000 square foot build out of existing space to next year we are permitting a 25,000 square foot brand new ground up high school for them. So that client awesome. Has been a great one. We've done the worst warehouses in the city into beautiful high school locations. And now this will be our first ground up building with them in 2025. So I would say our specialty is education. And then we also have that adaptive reuse to be able to go into some of these old warehouses. One of them was a dry cleaner, and see the potential, get the programming to fit, and get the project from start to finish.
Yeah. You're not the first that has said the market type came to them. Like they didn't go looking for it, and then they're a specialty in it. And it's amazing how that client has become such a big part of your business too.
Yes.
To build that up and building that relationship. So
It's been
But
great.
congratulations on the new
Even
school.
that portfolio of work we've done with them allowed us to get pre-qualified as like a shortlisted architect for our local Catholic diocese. So now we've done several projects in a number of the elementary schools, like the Catholic elementary schools in our area, some of their day camp and summer camp locations. So building that resume of education experience allowed us to break into other private sectors. And I'm hoping next year we have a chance at a public sector school. We've responded to a few RFPs, but some of the projects are probably bigger than we can handle right now. So we'll just keep throwing our name in the hat and see if we can land one.
Yeah, you never know which one's going to stick. And then that'll be the next challenge. And then that'll seem small to you.
And then that will seem, yes.
And I know, so you're at year 6 of NR Design, and you have some employees now. So what was it like to hire your first employee? Because I know that can be a hard step when you go off on your own to who to hire, what to hire, can you pay them? So
Yes.
how was that process for you?
That process was definitely a stressful moment in the story of our firm. We have 6 employees, including myself. We are looking to hire probably 2 more people next year, one at an intern level and one at a full architect level. But that first hire came at a really hard point in my life personally, but also it was post-COVID. I had just had my son. He was maybe 3 months old at the time, and people had money. So developers were doing things, schools were doing renovations, people were doing additions to their homes. At that time, we were still doing residential work, and my phone was ringing off the hook. And at that point, it was just me. I was a new mom, and I had no idea how I was going to balance all of that at one time. And again, a relationship with a peer of mine. I had ran into this gentleman at a meeting and kind of mentioned to him that, wow, business is really booming. I have a ton of work. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it all. And he said, oh, my neighbor across the street, their daughter just finished her undergraduate degree in architecture. She moved back home. She lives 30 minutes north of here. Why don't you talk to her? I'm not sure what she's doing. I don't know if she's looking for a job. I don't know if she already has a job. Why don't you have lunch with her? So I took Shelby out to lunch, and she brought her portfolio. And I don't know if she was more nervous or I was more nervous, but the two of us had the most awkward lunch. And afterwards, I was like, I can teach her. She is interested enough. She's excited enough. And she had worked through her college years, which again showed me that she had time management skills and that she was dedicated to what she was doing. And I could teach her anything else. So I took a risk on her. She took a risk on me. And she even shared with me a couple of months ago that at that point, she was not sure if she wanted to continue in architecture or not. And taking the job with me had like re-inspired her to go back to school and finish her graduate program, which she's in now. And like, that was the best compliment to get, was that, working with me, like, re-inspired her that this is what architecture in the professional world is like. If you don't like the school world all that much, or it seems really fussy, know that it's different outside. So yeah, that's the story of my first hire. So Shelby is still with me today. I hired her I think she officially started with me in 2022. So she will have been with the firm for 3 years now. Yeah.
Yeah. And to have that, I didn't scare you away from architecture type
Well,
of
and like she would come to the
experience.
house at that point because I didn't have an office. I was still like working from home. So here I am, like with this infant who didn't go to daycare right away, like trying to do architecture in our spare bedroom, which was set up as an office. Like, I give her a ton of credit for seeing my potential as well and like sticking it out with me.
Yeah, and not freaking out and
Yeah.
no. But also the awkward lunch I also love because students get so nervous and worked up about going to interviews. I'm like, you do realize like the
I'm more
firm
nervous
has to
than you
also
are.
interview the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Like you have
Especially
to
a
like
small firm
me.
owner.
Correct. Yes. We have interviewed a few
Yeah.
individuals who I could tell would not enjoy our culture. We sit in one open room, there's 6 desks, and it's loud. And sometimes we all turn and face each other and just talk about life and how much, holidays are hard and relationships are hard. And my kid's driving me nuts and, whatever. So,
Yeah. But it's good to have that relationship too. And also share. I feel like I'm having more conversations with college students that get frustrated that studio isn't what they expected and just trying to get them into practice. It's
yes,
you're going to like practice more
it will
if
be
not
different.
that
Yes.
yeah, it's not a love-hate relationship with studio, but I remember I'm more of a technical mindset, practical
Right.
mindset, I tend to say when
Yes.
I reference studio. So I was very much ready. Get me into practice. Like, I want real world scenarios. I want gravity to exist and
To
dollars to
matter.
exist.
Yes.
Yeah, to make
Yes.
this make sense
Yeah.
and help people that aren't architects. Like, I love helping owners that have no idea how to read drawings or how to bring their vision to life.
Yes.
And that is the magical moment for me. And you don't hit that in studio. So
Right. Yes.
I know I've had a number of conversations over the last even 6 months with multiple students that are struggling to just get through studio. And I'm like, you got this. You're on the right path.
Head down.
Everything you're
Just
saying
go.
is fantastic. Just, focus, head down. And when you need a job, you call me. And either I will hopefully have a position or I'm going to connect you with an amazing firm that I know people in. And you're going to have a blast.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
We do a few.
But do you have any?
Sorry.
Good.
I was going to say we started doing like shadow days. I know enough people that know young students in architecture programs. So I'll get a call from a friend and say, oh, my neighbor's son or daughter is studying architecture. Can they come shadow you for a day? And so we started offering that more and more because it is so different. The professional world is so different than studio. And I like bringing in those kids in their first year and their second year, in their third and fourth year when they're just getting beaten up and, the twinkle in their eye is dimming. We bring them in, we take them out to lunch. We try to set up a time where we have a call for an actual project that they can sit in on and listen to. And then I try to make sure my younger staff is in the office who are currently going through school and they can ask them questions. I've seen a lot of positive on both ends. It re-inspires us to love what we do, and it helps the students see, hey, like professional practice is really fun and similar but different to studio in ways that I see being more fulfilling.
Yeah, because they always light a spark, especially if you're, in the trenches of CA sometimes, and then they come up with a design idea. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this is why I love architecture.
I
And,
forgot. Yeah.
you know,
It's not just flashing details.
it's like, okay. It's take a break. But do you have any advice for those first few years of business?
First few years of running a business? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, based on feedback I get from clients and general contractors, and this might not be something that people, the millennial generation or younger, want to hear, you have to answer your phone. I get more projects and reoccurring relationships that happened from cold calls than I would have ever imagined. And now they're not cold calls on their end. Usually they've gotten my name from somebody who's worked with me before. But everyone sees a number on their phone come through that is not recognized. It's just a bunch of digits. And you think, oh, I don't want to answer this. I'm in the middle of this thing. I have this thing I have to finish. I just got off a call and my phone's immediately ringing again. But I've gotten some really, really nice projects and some great lasting relationships by just answering my phone. As stressful as that is.
Hey, I would say that to even trades.
Yes.
Sometimes
maybe
the people I get to work on my house, I take, like, we just hired on a plumber to do some work, and we got multiple bids. He was not the lowest bid, but he was responsive. When we had questions, I'm like, responsiveness of individuals when I've got a question or something happens is paramount to me over the dollar amount, as long as they're not like triple somebody's budget. But picking up the phone is just so important. So
yeah.
What was the other piece?
I've definitely edited my engineering teams based on their responsiveness and their ability to pick up a phone or respond to an email. So yeah, that goes both ways. My other piece of advice, I think I've probably already repeated myself enough times on this one, but it's kind of twofold. You're not going to know everything. There's just no way to. Like, architects are expected to know a little bit about everything. But know that you don't have the answers all the time, but surround yourself with people who can help you find the answers. Other mentors, peers, colleagues. There was another, I'm going to blank on her name. There's another woman that I would listen to her podcasts all the time, and it was more of a self-help, like personal coaching type theme. And you set yourself up for the most success when you have friends in all three stages of life. So a friend who's ahead of you, already been through what you're going through, older than you, able to pour backwards into you. A peer who's kind of right at your same point so that you can share and commiserate and share the load. And then a friend who's behind you, because pouring into them will also teach you things and bring you satisfaction. So I think that in the professional world is also true. Have a mentor, have a mentee, and have some peers that are right at your same point.
Yeah, because sometimes you just need to let it out and vent to that peer.
Yes.
But I guess this will lead me into my next segment of venting. But I know when we met at the Women's Leadership Summit, you mentioned you're now also a single mom. So do you have any advice for entrepreneurs that have either moved into being a single parent or trying to start out as a single parent?
I probably have a lot of advice on that one. I think one thing that I wanted to share, and I'm not perfect at it. I beat myself up about it maybe on a daily basis, certainly on a weekly basis, is setting boundaries around your work schedule, setting boundaries around your parenting schedule. So I had my son, I had already started my firm. I started my firm in 19. He was born in 21, and he went to daycare pretty early. He went to daycare at about 12 weeks old. He went only a couple days a week, but in order for me to do my job, I needed help with him. I was not going to be able to work and parent at the same time. And I knew that that was something I would not be able to do. I'm not saying that other people are not able to do that, but I knew that was something that I was going to need help with. And I definitely got some flack for it, sending him that early. But he was not the only one at daycare that age. And I have some great friends who sent their kids at the same time. And so what I really tried to do was, he's at school. He was maybe only at school 6 hours, 3 days a week. So I would walk him to daycare, go back home, and those 6 hours, I did nothing but work. I did not do laundry. I did not wipe my countertop or clean my kitchen. I really focused and set boundaries around that work time. And when it was time to go pick him up, I would close down for the day and I would go get him, and I would give him all the attention for the rest of the evening until he went to bed. And even to this day, our schedule has shifted. I've added time on daycare. My office hours have expanded based on need. And when I leave my office at 3:45 to pick him up at 4:00, I do not answer phone calls. I do not answer emails until he goes to bed. And my repeat customers or engineers, my GCs, they know that. So they know not to call me, or they'll send me a voicemail. They won't call. They'll just directly voice message me. I know you're not on right now, but the next time you open it up, can you look at this? It's critical. It's mission critical. And so that has really worked for me. I've had some clients that don't want to respect that, and I've had to push back on them and set a boundary with them that this is what my schedule is. And then same with my son. It's so hard when he walks down those stairs at 9:30 and he's supposed to be asleep, but I have to march him right back up there and say, now is not the time. I read you books. I will come snuggle with you in a little bit. So it's hard. I would say, give yourself grace. So set your boundaries, be firm in your boundaries, but then know that you need to give yourself grace too. Because sometimes I do just want to crawl in bed with him and snuggle and forget about those emails and that deadline and just be a mom.
Mm-hmm. If nothing's on fire that night, go pick him over work.
I do pick him over work. Yes. I really try to make sure he understands, if it's mission critical, mommy needs to do X. If it's not, I will close the laptop in front of him and say, okay, let's go do it.
When you talk about setting your boundaries, I think it's about having that open communication with your team that you're working with. So the contractors know what your timeline is. They understand you have priorities and things you need to take care of, that you can't put your whole self at work. But then when you're in that work time zone, you're really in work time zone. And so I know I do the same thing with my boundaries. If it's hot or important, leave me a voice message or something, and I'll go take a look at it and I'll get that done first. Like if I have a long list of emails, I'm going to go through all of them and then figure out what one's hot. And I even tell some of my contractors, once I've had them for a while, to like how to phrase certain things so it catches my searches faster. But I make sure I get to know them first. And I'm like, okay, I'm letting you into my secret code. Put this word in and your thing will pop up to the top of my list.
Right. There's only a few that I will answer the phone to outside of my hours because they know and I know that they're not supposed to be calling me then. And so if they are, it's an emergency. So.
Mm-hmm. And they understand what emergency is, and
they
not
understand
everything
that that's
is an
not
emergency.
everything. Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So where do you hope to see NR design to go in the future besides getting bigger school projects and public schools?
So I would love to have, what would you say, our reputation as a firm being a firm that provides the ability to have a work-life balance, a firm where everyone feels empowered and appreciated, and challenged to learn and grow and strive to do things they want to do. I asked my two youngest staff members several months ago in the summer, what type of project would they like to do the most? Like if we could cherry pick a project, what would it be? And both of them answered. They were so excited to kind of daydream about it. And I promised to them, my goal for them is to be able to find those kinds of projects and get them so that they can then work on things that they're truly interested in, and not just, here's a storage unit, here's an office build out, here's another school building. Because I know everybody's passions are different, and I want to hopefully be able to provide them with that. That satisfaction of a project specific challenge. And then
and not all firms do that. So
yeah, like it's their career too. And as much as I hope they stay with me and thrive and are wonderful and love their jobs, I can't guarantee that they will. They might have reasons to go somewhere else, or I had a great experience working for several other firms. I think I learned a lot seeing the ways that different firms did it. So yeah, to keep them happy and then hopefully challenge them to learn new things. But yeah, and then anything. Yeah. So I in my notes, I wrote this, that a wise person once told me not to speak too specifically about your dreams and goals, because when you do, you sort of trick your brain into thinking you've already done it. So I journal my goals and I keep them in different notebooks. And I do have goals that we're working towards, but I'm too afraid to share them out loud until we achieve them.
Yeah. Then you can share that you've been working on the goals for a year and you achieve them.
Exactly.
And goals pivot. You never know what curveballs or different things are going to pop up.
It was never a goal of mine to start a firm, and here we are. So I would say, with that in mind, certainly goals can change and flex and pivot.
Yeah. And my last question is always more of a reflection question. So it's, what advice do you have for young professionals just starting their career?
Hang in there. You're at a really exciting point, just starting out of college or maybe still in college, looking for your first internship. Find a firm where you can grow and where you see other employees happy. It's tempting to go work for a firm with a notable name or a notable architect as the lead. But you might and will learn more at a firm that has more room for you. some of the people I graduated with, one young lady went and worked in New York City for one of the big names. And I'm like specifically not naming anybody to stay anonymous, but we used to catch up and chat and like, how's it going? Do you love it? Like, what are you doing? And she was so disappointed because she's working at this great firm with this huge name and everyone's so jealous that she got that placement. And all she did all day long was detail bathrooms. And I was at a firm that people had heard of because it was in the area of where our school was. And I was detailing everything. And I was getting to go to client meetings. And, it was such a better experience going somewhere that was willing to show you everything versus you're the newest hire, you get to do, the grunt work essentially. So I still did grunt work, but I feel like I was exposed to a lot of things as well.
Yeah, because I know that's always the joke in college that you don't want to just do like bathroom details, like
for stairs.
Bathroom details are a great teaching moment because they are so code specific, different clearances, and it's one spot and you can focus in on it. But then to just keep doing them, like I still hate doing stair details.
Yes.
And so if somebody else wants to do stair details, go for it.
Yes, as much as possible. Yeah. I had my intern today doing bathrooms. She's like, again, I've already done this. I was like, great, then you should be able to do it much faster. Now, she does a lot of other things too. That was just the task for today. But
yeah, but it's always the running joke. So
it is.
But
even in a small office, it's a running joke.
Yeah, but that's fantastic. And I like that you cross-check with your youngest employees to figure out what they want to do. And, we can't cherry pick what projects we get or don't get, no matter what firm size we're in. But if you at least know where somebody wants to go or try, you can attempt and get close.
Yeah.
Or keep an eye out for it.
We are actually really close. So one of the interns asked to do a restaurant, and we've had a few restaurants come through our doors and we've gone after them, and a few did not have real budgets. But we have one maybe in Q1 that will turn into something. So I keep telling her, like, hang in there, it's coming.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
But at least they're starting to come in the door.
They are. Yep.
So, but if anybody's looking to get a hold of you or come and shadow your firm for a day, if they're a student, what's the best way to get a hold of you guys?
I think the best way to get a hold of us is by emailing us. And our email can be found on our website. So our website is nrdesign.com. And you will find my email is on there, Nicole @ and then our office manager's email is also on the website, Lisa @ nrdesign.com. She'll get me all the
and
messages.
I'll leave your website down below, so then it makes it real easy for somebody to click on it and take a look at what you're doing, and if they want to shadow you guys.
Yeah, sounds good.
But thank you, Nicole, for taking the time to speak with me today, and it was good to catch up again. So
thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. I appreciate the opportunity.
I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. Learn some advice to take with you and see how our industry is all tied together to create the world around us. Check out the description below for any links or resources we discussed. If you liked the episode, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up and leave a comment below. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support finding that career path that best works for them. If you know someone that has inspired your own career that you'd like me to interview, let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me via my website or LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share their story or your own.
Thank you again, and I cannot wait for the next career story I get to share with you next week.